tonight, our study is going to be taking us into Genesis, the first chapter, of course, still there, verses 14 through 26 for our text. So let's read that. Let's read our text together tonight. And it reads like this in Genesis 1, beginning at verse number 14. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens, to give light on the earth." And it was so. Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the fourth day. Then God said, "Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly over the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens." So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth." So the evening and the morning were the fifth day. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth a living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beasts of the earth, each according to its kind." And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." What do you see in the text tonight? Yes, Michelle.
I never really noticed this before, but on day 5, he created the sea creatures and the birds. But there are a lot of birds that eat things like worms and bugs and all that kind of stuff. And they weren't made until day 6 or day 5, or the next day. And so that's a pretty good argument to me for the fact that these are literal days, because why would God leave them for years without something to eat?
That's right. They'd have to fast for a day if that was the case. Yeah, instead of fasting for a long period of time. Any other observations you've noticed here? Wow. Very quiet.
Everything was good.
That's right. That's right. God said everything. God said that it was good. Everything was good, except on one day. And then on another day, He said everything was very good. And so we'll kind of touch on that tonight as well. Yes, Hannah.
Another thing I thought was kind of interesting is that on each day, there's like groups of things were created instead of like saying like birds, animals, plants, whatever were made on the same day. They were made in groups in different days. That's a very, very good point. And creatures that seemingly shared a lot of. He didn't create some of the fish one day and the rest of the fish the next day. Some of the birds one day. Now we don't know where that line is drawn. One question I run into this week was, when did He create the insects? And could He just left that part out?
But the birds needed something to eat.
Birds need, and you see, the birds could have very well been eating the insects on the first day.
I think until the fall of man, everything was a vegetarian.
That's right. It's assumed that there was no killing that was going on between, and so you could very well be. That could be a very good point. Very good point. Yes. Any other observations that you see there?
Yes.
Maybe this is going into the weeds, and I wasn't here last week. Schofield Reference Bible makes note of this. Verse 2, and the earth was without form and void. And some scholars suggest that this implies a state of prior existence, that the earth had existed previously. That's when the dinosaurs and the cavemen and all those people ran around.
Yeah.
I tend to disbelieve it. If we think God can create things in a day, why not? You know?
We actually did touch on the gap theory, it's called. And the gap theory, some believe that's when the angels was created, and some believe that's when Satan's fall took place and stuff. But I'm with you. I don't think, I think it's, as we pointed out last week, I think it's more conjecture than fully supported. Now, there's a lot of decent scholars that actually believe that. So, I'm personally a literalist. When it comes to creation, I'm a young earther. I believe that 6 days meant 6 days. I don't believe there was a gap. There's also one theory that believes that between each day there was an extended period of time. I don't see a hint of that in the scriptures. But at the same time, there's some decent scholars that have some very different ideas. So as we walk through creation, don't feel like you have to agree with everything the pastor says. That is not the 11th commandment. Thou shalt not disagree with the pastor. So there may be some areas that you might think, because when it really comes down to it, I had a friend of mine that believed that unless you believe creation the way he believed creation, and he had some pretty far out, then you weren't saved at all. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, Jesus didn't mention that. That's not redemptive. That Jesus didn't say that was the way to salvation. So I said, in issues like this and areas like this, I tend to lean more toward what I feel is clearly stated in the scriptures to the best of my ability. But I've heard some good arguments for even the gap theory. I've heard some good arguments. I still can't buy it, but I've heard some good arguments for that. But I still lean toward, let me follow that book as closely as I can follow that book. And I have a hard time buying into a belief of creation that says that in Genesis chapter 1, a day meant something different than it meant in all the rest of the Bible. I just have a hard time buying that, because it would just don't, because and as we'll see, I believe there's evidences for a literal 6-day creation. Yes.
Eric and I were talking about this the other day. God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. It doesn't say reflector.
You're right. You're right. But we do know that the original light came from God, right?
Right.
And and I've heard some scholars point out that what we have there a picture of is God and is Jesus Christ and us. We are the light of the world, but we're not emitting our own light. We're reflecting His light to the world around it. And I thought, hey, that's a really neat way to kind of see that. Although it's considered a light source, it's actually a reflective light source. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yes, Al.
Well, when he put the stars, placed the stars in place, I mean, they don't move. They're where he put them when he put them there.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in Joshua it says he made the sun stand still. The sun had never moved. He made the earth stand still. Basically,
that's
the
right.
Bible doesn't say it that way, but
Right.
Right. Since we know what our solar system
That's right.
does.
And we know that in that event, not only was the sun standing still, the moon was standing still, that the entire rotation system had just been stopped.
When our sun reflects light off the moon at night, it really does. It lights up the landscape all around.
Yeah, oh, yes.
In fact, astronomers hate it because they can't see the planets with the moon's light unless they put a dimming filter behind the eyepiece.
That's right.
When they focus it in.
Yeah.
But the stars were the ones that light up the night.
Oh, yeah.
And
And,
there
yeah,
are billions light years out there, most of them.
absolutely.
But we still get the light from them.
Now, how many of you saw God's display the last couple of nights of the moon? You know, yeah, boom! It's just right there, just right to remind you of that lesser light that we have, and it's a beautiful sight to be able to walk out in the middle of the night, and sometimes it seems almost as light as day, you know, because of it. Any other observations that we noted about our text? Now, last week we started our study with the study of In the Beginning God, because we believe that everything didn't start with us, everything didn't start with the planet, everything didn't start with creation, everything literally started with God. And so we begin to look at him and his involvement, because really what Genesis 1:1 is not just the first time we see creation, it's the first time we see God. It's the first time that we have and we saw how diverse of things that he revealed to us about himself in just those first few verses of Genesis, first Genesis. So we need to understand that he is the biggest factor in creation of it all. Now, that we have a great benefit in that we can break down these scriptures, we can look at the details of creation, what creation says, what creation means, and we can look at them piecemeal by piecemeal. But I believe that we can also, it's a great advantage for us to see creation as a whole. Creation, to get a bird's eye view of it and take a look at creation because of what it teaches us, not just in the details, but in everything. Last week we saw how the process of creation was important. That how God put things into motion. As Michelle was talking about, you kind of can look into what's next and what happened before that, because all of it lined up. The order of creation is important. Now, for something that scientists believe is random, you can't have the perfection that we know on earth by just a lot of random things happening, and all of a sudden everything just falls perfectly into place. In that manner. So for us, it's important for us to realize that the order of creation is vital and important. So tonight we're going to be looking at the 6 days of creation. And since we've already touched on three of those days, we're going to quickly review those and look at the last 4 days of creation and just see the lessons that not only the details will show us, but more so what the whole creation teaches us. Now, something I hope that you've noticed in your text, and that is the echoes in creation. What do you mean, Pastor, by the echoes in creation? If you notice in reading the creation story, you'll notice that there's a lot of things that are repeated again and again and again. Now, any of us that's been in the Word for any time at all, and I'm including those of you all in this room, we realize something. When Jesus repeated something, it was for what reason? To emphasize it. When the Word of God repeats it again and again, it's because he knows he has a lot of stubborn children that need to hear it again and again and again. I believe he's making a point by repeating certain factors in our life. And so I call those events, I call those things that are repeated in creation story, echoes in creation, because they're trying to drive home certain truths. Last week we looked at the first echo in creation, and that's God, or God says. Throughout this entire story, we see God. We see God at work. We see God at creation. We see God moving on things. We see God organizing. We see God sustaining. We see God in that. He is the very first echo in creation. What is some other echoes? Somebody tell me. If it's repeated, whether it's a phrase or a word, or maybe it's a practice in creation, what are some of the echoes that we see here?
God saw that it was good.
That's right. He saw that it was good.
And as we pointed out, in every day that he did an actual creation. Now on the second day when he did the atmosphere, he didn't actually create it, but he actually just brought into order what he had already created. He divided the waters in the sea, and he created an atmosphere around this earth. So some scholars believe that since he didn't actually create out of nothing, then he didn't use the phrase that he saw that it was good. Now, why do you think he said on the sixth day that it was very good?
He was done.
Was that?
He was done.
That's good. That's a good point. He could have simply said, everything is just great. Everything is just perfect. Is there any other reason why he might have said it's very good?
Because man was created in his own image.
Because man was created. That's a significant thing. Many scholars believe that man is, and as we're going to look, and by the way, we're going to touch on man's creation today, but we're going to focus on it next week. So we're going to include man's creation, but we're going to look deeper into what that creation means, its purpose, and what it tells us about us in this whole thing. So he said it was good. He said it was very good. Absolutely good is an echo in creation. What are some others?
Evening and morning.
Evening and morning. That's right. He says that again and again. And the evening and the morning was the second day. Evening and the morning was the third day. We saw last week that in the creation of light, that he divided the light from the day, that what had to take place there is the light had to be fixed. And the earth at that point had to begin to rotate so that day and night, and that it was set on its rotation. That's one of the big reasons I believe in a literal 6 day, a 24-hour, 6 day creation. I believe that God was saying again and again and again, it followed the same patterns that your days follow. Have you noticed that it's different than our day?
Yes. Evening and morning was a day. Today it's morning and evening.
That's right. On our calendar, we count a day as starting when? Midnight. And ending when? Midnight. Okay. Who sees days starting at dusk?
The Jews.
The Jews. Absolutely. It's the Jewish view of night and day. It starts at dusk. It goes through the night and evening, and then it comes into the morning. It comes into the daylight. It follows that Jewish idea of day. Some scholars say that one beautiful thing about this is it pictures our redemption, which is and that is that we come out of darkness into His marvelous light. And that's where we stay. So absolutely, it points to that 24-hour day, but it looks at it from a very Jewish vantage point. Any other echoes that we see here? God saw. Yeah, you can see that God saw. It emphasizes again and again His interaction, His involvement, his activity with creation. He was very involved with what he did. He recognized, he saw things, he acted on those things. It's a very powerful thing. Yes.
God said.
God said. That's right. Yep. Here we go. We included that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that.
That's okay. We included that in on the God being
Right.
being that too. That God says is constant. Yes, Cindy.
They multiply according to their kind.
According to their kind. That's the biggie. Anybody know how many times he says that?
Cattle, the birds, the fish, the creatures.
Yeah.
The plants.
He actually says that in creation
10 times in Genesis 1. I think he's trying to make a point, don't you? What do you think? What do you think that point is? I believe he realized that there was going to be some nutcases later that's going to try to claim that one kind can become a completely different kind. That a fish can climb off of the water, become a beast, and that beast can become a man. And you've seen the charts, in school. I believe that he wanted to drive that point home, that each of them was out of their kind. We'll see that in the seed. We'll see that in the plant life. We'll see that in animal life. We'll see that in the seas and in the birds of the air. That constant I guess you say reproduction that's taking place. Al?
Well, until we cracked the code of the DNA, we didn't know anything.
And it was just, to us, it was just happening. We didn't know what's going on.
They existed, but and there's still a lot about the DNA they don't know. But they know that they can make positive identity. More so with DNA, they came with fingerprints of an individual.
How many of you know any buildings that the architect built, left the blueprints inside, and he come back next week and there was a second building? But God did that. God placed within us and within life the blueprint to build it. You can take a seed. I can tell you, you can take a seed, and if you could write out all the information that's in that seed, it would take thousands of books to do so. What the leaf will look like, what the bark will be, what the average height of a full-grown mature tree, how it will handle the wind. All these things are encapsulated in a little speck that you get dropped into the ground because God designed it to be so. Because he was starting that pattern of reproducing its kind. Isn't that beautiful? That the brilliance of God. That God created it that way. Yes, Al?
Before any of that can come to pass, that seed has to germinate.
It has to have the right conditions, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. When a seed germinates, there's basically three components to it. You got a stem, you got leaves, and a root system. Mm-hmm. The stuff that comes, that produces later on, comes from just those three items.
That's right. All those things just becoming more and more the case. Any other echoes that you see there? Yes.
God created, God made.
Yeah, that's right. God created, God made. Just an affirmation, a constant affirmation that he was the creator. Constant affirmation that, when did man get involved?
At the end.
At the end. So that should tell us that, man didn't have anything to do with this. It was none of man's brilliance. Science wants to revolve around man so often, but God's creation said, no, this was all about God and God's doing and God's involvement. And then the very last thing he did was he created man. I believe if he had created man first, man would have taken credit for the other 6 days. Yes.
This may be kind of going back to the other lesson, but of there being all 3 of them there. Because for one thing, who's he going to say, let us do this?
Absolutely.
And let us make man, not me, let us.
That's right. It was plural. That's right. One more echo that I want to point out to you is the word rule. Rule was used of 2 things in creation. It was the sun and the moon that was said to rule. And then later in the creation of man, a very similar word, dominion. And we're gonna actually look more at that next week and see, how do they relate? What does God meant when he meant rule? What did God meant when he meant to have dominion over? So we're gonna look at that. So let's jump right in and take a tour
quick tour. Well, not so quick.
Is that being stubborn?
Yeah, it has been for, I want to say, I'm trying to work with it. All right, there you go.
You're gonna have to get after the guy that put it together.
That's right, that's right, that's right. Give him a hard time, give him a hard time.
Yeah.
Okay, day one. I need your help. Anybody that has your Bible or you were here last week, what happened on day one?
Separate light from dark.
Light from dark, that's right. There was light. So in the very first day, we can, if you're taking notes, day one is light. It's basically working with light, creating light, going from light to darkness. We realized that before there was a sun, before there was a moon, God said, let there be light. So he didn't, the light that he spoke wasn't reliant upon the sun. You know, later the sun would be, he'd make that the source of that light. But up until that point, for days, there was it was out without sun, without moon, without stars. So we see the light of God. We see the lifelessness, the of things. There was no life other than the Godhead, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So we see the very beginning. I think it's very important for us to realize that there was an entire day given to this. That's how vitally important it was to God. As Hannah pointed out, a lot of times he grouped in creation, but on this first day, he said, let there be light. We learned last week in the Gospel of John why that's the case, because the light was representative of the light that was to come. It was Jesus Christ, and the emphasis that he would have there. Now, one of the important things that we didn't touch on last week that I think you need to touch on is in the Bible it says, and this was the first day, right? Isn't that the way it reads? Is that
And there was evening and there was morning, the first day.
the first day. In the original Hebrew, that phrase is different than the other days. That phrase, if you go literally, it says, at the evening and the morning, and it was one day. So that further emphasizes the literal 24-hour situation. It wasn't just saying this was that first period of time. It's saying this was a day, you know. And so it can further confirm that in our hearts and minds. We realize that the rotation of the earth took place. That evening and morning took place. That in an encapsulated 24-hour time. We also realized last week that for this to take place, there had to be the rotation of the earth to put into place. Not just a separation of darkness and light, but a mechanism to cause that to continue. You know, we still have a separation of darkness and light. Some of you drove in, it was light. You're going to leave, it's going to be dark. You know, and that's the system that we have. So that's day one. What was day two? The firmament. What is a more modern day term that we use for firmament? The atmosphere. That's right. Anybody remember anything that we covered last week about the atmosphere? That it wasn't really an act of creation. It was God. The word firmament is a Hebrew word that is used in pounding out gold. Have you ever seen anybody pound out gold until it's paper thin? And it just keeps getting wider and wider and wider. That's the word used for firmament. And it goes along with Isaiah when he said he stretched out the heavens. And so he took what existed there, stretched it out. He separated the waters from the waters. We touched on last week how we believe that many scholars teach that there was a heavy canopy that was over the entire earth, that it created a rather tropic atmosphere. That's why we have fossils in the Arctic.
that speak of a tropic environment, that it created this great canopy. And then what event happened that changed that? The flood is believed to have changed that, in that the waters from up above and the waters from below came together and created this deluge. Now we also saw that we have a Goldilocks atmosphere. What does that Goldilocks atmosphere mean? What did the bears say? I mean, she said when she found that was
Not too hot, not too cold, not too big, not too small.
that's right. That's just right. And so we have a just right atmosphere in that it sustains our lives and the lives of the animals and the lives of the beasts around about us, the lives of that rat that drives you crazy and that. But you know, all the life, it just kind of sustains that. We have an atmosphere that scientists have yet to find a duplication of. On no other planet. You know, science fiction, you know, Star Trek wants to beam down on a planet where they don't have to have helmets. They hadn't found it yet. You know, the atmosphere is a Goldilocks atmosphere. There's even a scientific name for that. Al, did you have something?
I would say that science has been able to divide the atmosphere into three different phases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the upper atmosphere, before you get into space, I think is the third one, and then there's one in the middle. And I think the reason it is because it allows for the weather to change if it needs to. If God needs the weather to change, He can do it by dropping or lowering the temperature in whatever entity of the atmosphere that He wants to. If He wants to bring a snowstorm, He can do it. Just by thinking about what it's going to go through. If it's wet further up, it'll turn to snowflakes when it gets in the middle.
Yeah.
And it might turn into sleet when it gets in the first one, and then we get it.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned
I'm not trying to say that's good or bad, but I mean,
Right.
because
There's things that go.
climate change. We've had it ever since the world began, and it's not going to change because that's how the weather was made. Because you have to make it that way.
Well, and it's funny.
Seasons couldn't change if you didn't have climate change.
Yeah. Now it's funny you say that because God called the firmament what?
Sky, a vault,
What's that?
a vault, sky.
No, look, just remember, he actually calls it a specific word.
Heavens.
Heaven. He called it heaven. Now, Al, you said that the atmosphere is broken down into three parts.
That's what scientists tell us.
Yeah, now that's science. Here's Bible. Heaven is two. What?
Yes, right,
What?
yeah.
Remember Paul in Paul's words when he said that he was caught up into the
Third heaven.
third heaven. That's right. Bible scholars believe that the atmosphere that surrounds our earth is considered the first heaven, and then the outer space is considered the second heaven, and the place where God abides is they call the third heaven. So it's a very powerful picture. It's a very powerful picture here for us too, on a spiritual level too, because some scholars say it's a beautiful picture that God created in creation that shows us that we are designed to be surrounded by the kingdom of heaven. And that we're designed to abide not just on this earth, but that we're supposed to be a part of something much more glorious to us. So he calls it heaven. As a matter of fact, we see it both in creation. We see both the use of the word heaven, singular, and the word heavens, plural. So that goes along with that. Now let's take a look at day 3. Well, day 3. Let's see. I missed. If you taking notes, day 2 was the atmosphere. Day 3 is lands, seas, and plant life. Lands, seas, and plant life.
Land, sea. We saw how last week that this was so very preparatory to what was coming, and that was that plants produce what? Oxygen. That's right. And the creatures that would be created just a couple of days later would be in big need, including man, of something to breathe. And the fact that an ancient creation story would know that thousands upon thousands of years before man ever figured that out. That, you know, what we call this stuff that we breathe and connect it to the plant life is just miraculous. So we see land, seas, and plant life. We once again we see these things taking place before there was a sun, before there was a moon. Before those things were into play. So they must have been sustained simply by the hand of God for, as Michelle pointed out, maybe that day. Yes, James.
Well, let's say God made the light, right?
He did make the light. That's right. That's right. The light was the very first thing, and it sustained them. So, but they didn't have the lunar cycles and things like that God put into play a few days later.
There was still light for them, it just didn't have to be from the sun.
That's right. Now something happened on day 3. Something started on day 3 that would carry out for the rest of creation, and that is what I like to call the forming and the filling. Meaning that was his pattern. That was the pattern of God. He created a place for things, then he filled it. He created land. He created the sea. He created these environments he formed things and then he filled things. I love that picture of it. Right in here, basically what we see is lands and separated from seas, and then there's all this plant life, but there was nothing else. But he was simply forming what he was about to feel in the next few days. Isn't that the way God is? God goes before and he prepares things to fill our lives. Yes.
He made the house, and then whoever lives in it or on it.
That's right.
Just like heaven, he's going to make a house for us when we go to heaven.
That's right. Now there was a Christian singer that had the phrase, and one of my favorite phrases: "If God can make all this in 6 days, imagine what He can make with a few thousand years." Because He's been gone, and He told us, "I'm going to prepare a place for you, that where I am, there you may be also." So yeah, if you think creation is great, you ain't seen nothing yet. So we see this forming. We see this. This is also where we see that phrase, "according to its kind." That stretches across. We see it just repeated again and again. Like I said, 10 times. 10 times it is mentioned in the word "according to its time." Evolution says that creation can change from one kind of thing to some. Now, let me make something clear. There can be all kinds of variations in the kind. The kind is the family. One thing evolutionists try to say is you couldn't put all the animals on an ark. No, but you can put one of each kind, and they can reproduce and make. I mean, let's take dogs, please take them. But we it's been said that I think it's 100 years ago, only like 20% of the breeds existed. And because of crossbreeding and all this, we've created all these subspecies of dogs. But guess what? They're dogs. That is their kind. Creationists believe that all that Noah had to do to cover that was to have 15 kinds, 15,000 kinds upon the ark for them to be able to, but that doesn't mean that just because there's some variation, that there's radical variation that takes place. We've not seen that. We haven't seen, a one subspecies become a totally different species out there. As a matter of fact, one quote that I want to point out to you was actually a quote in a scientific journal. It's Austin Clark, the Quarterly Review of Biology, said this. He said, thus so far as concerns the major groups of animals, the creationists seem to have the better of the argument. There is not the slightest evidence that many of the major groups ever arose from any other. So he's a biologist testifying in a journal. Whether he's still allowed to even be printing in that journal, I don't know. But he made the argument there's been no evidence that anything other than this ever happened or is capable of happening. You can say it take a billion years. You can tell it say a trillion years. It's not possible because God designed it in each of us, and God designed it in the fish of the sea. He designed it in man. So we need to realize that. We need to realize that's true here. So let's jump into day 4. What is day 4? Day 4 is the sun, the moon, and the stars. Now, here's where creation kind of takes a giant leap, doesn't it? When we think about creation, we think about earth, right? God created the universe on day 4. Not just created the earth, but the universe. And I love that here in the Word. Notice what it says in verse number 16. Then God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. I love that. It talks about the greater light, which is what?
Sun.
The sun. The lesser light, which is the moon. And then this is my favorite part of this verse. And he also made the stars. And you can see why that's funny when we actually take a good look at the stars. Because it's almost as if God was saying, you ain't seen nothing yet. You think I can make the sun, I can make the moon? You just watch what I do across the universe in it all. But there's one text that kind of gives us a little different view of it, and it's Isaiah's words in Isaiah 4:40 and 12. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand? Measured heaven with the span, and calculated the dust of the earth in a measure, weighed the mountains in scales and the hills in a balance. Next time you go to the beach, look out there across that ocean and realize you're only seeing a fraction of what all fit in his hand. He measured the seas and the ocean, every drop of water in his hands. And then it said he measured heaven, the universe, with a span. You know what a span is? From the thumb to the pinky. That's how they measured things in ancient times. He said, God is so great and God is so big that he measured the entirety of the universe with a hand. So as believers in the Bible, I don't believe that space is infinite. I believe space is finite, but it's greater than man will ever discover. It's greater than man will ever know. God knows how far it goes. God knows when it stops. God knows when it comes to an end. So I'm so thankful that we know the God that can do that and have that in his life. Now, another story that I like is that one day Jesus was taking a nap. You see, taking naps is a holy thing. You see, if Jesus would do it, he's already confirmed it to be a good thing. But he's taking a nap on board a boat. Storm comes up, it's crazy. When it's crazy enough to cause lifetime fishermen to panic and to freak out and to know we're about to die. And they turn to Jesus and they shake him and wake him and say, don't you even care about us? You don't even care about us. We're going to let us die out here. And the Bible says he stands up He looks across the bow and he says, peace, be still. The same voice that spoke it into place. Now they hear it again. And what they do? They bowed in honor. They bowed in awe. The wind said stop. The seas calmed down. Like, I believe they were like glass when you looked across the sea. The clouds just rolled away and the sun shone through. Why? Because the voice of the Creator was proven to be Jesus Christ. He proved it when he spoke to nature. And I like the testimony of the disciples. Can even the winds and the waves obey his will? Yes, because you're on board with the Creator. And so that same Creator created the sun, moon, and the stars. Now, there's a couple of things that I want you to pay attention to here that I think is vital to understanding creation. First of all, the earth first. The earth first. Creation in Genesis 1 says that before anything else, the earth. Before the sun, before the universe, the earth. That was the order of things. Scientists say that we come out of a big bang that blew up somewhere in space and threw us all out here. And some of them even believe in aliens that has planets that are billions of years older than ours. Wrong. Genesis 1 teaches us that God first started with earth. He first started with this planet. And then on day 4, the universe came into place. Does that make you feel special? It makes me feel special. That God thought as much of man to say, well, I'm going to start all of this with you. I'm going to start all of this with a place for you and for creation. That it's going to be a place unlike any other. So I think that's a crucial point that we need to grab a hold of. The Big Bang says that the sun was first, the Big Bang theory, but creation says that earth was first. Earth was formed for life. It was formed particularly for human life, as we're going to see next week. But then I love this. Here it is. But he made the stars also. What a wonderful thing for the Bible to say. Just to throw that in. Yes.
Well, it's such an understatement.
It is.
Because it's a known solar system. We know that now.
That is. Now, more so than ever, the more we look out there, the more we discover.
Right.
The more we see. And for that to be a second, why was the stars created? Anybody know why the stars was created? The psalmist tells us that the stars were created for the glory of God. Just to show his glory. Just to show what he can do. Just to show who he is. He made the stars also. Can somebody tell me where the nearest star is to us?
Sun.
The sun. That's right. The sun. The sun is a star. I like it when he created the sun and he created the moon, that he had turned around and said, I'm just going to duplicate the sun too. I'm going to throw the suns all out there into space. Now, let me kind of give you an idea of the scale of things here, okay? The nearest star to us is the sun. If you had a golf ball, any golfers here? Oh, wow, you're sanctified. Oh, wait, a couple of them. But if you ever held a golf ball in your hand and said, this is the scale of Earth. Just imagine you have Earth in your hand. But then you pulled the sun up. How big would the sun be in comparison to that? It would take 1 million Earths to fill the sun. That's how massive that sun is. And can I tell you that of the stars, our sun is not the biggest.
No.
There's bigger stars. There's greater stars. And let me give you a little bit of equations here. With the naked eye, you can see 8,000 stars at night on a clear day. In a clear night, not a clear day, but in a clear night, you can see 8,000 stars out there. But in the Milky Way galaxy, which we are a part of, there's estimated to be between 1 and 400 billion stars. That's just in our galaxy. Our galaxy is one of what is estimated to be up to 2 trillion galaxies. So you have 2 trillion with billions of stars. Hard to imagine, isn't it? Hard to fathom, isn't it? That all these suns are just scattered. When you look up, we see these little specks. No, they could be equal to our sun or even greater. That's the greatness of God. If that boggles your mind, let me just add this to you. I like what the psalmist said in Psalms 147:4. He counts the numbers of the stars, which the Bible says. It clearly says, long before science was around, man can't count the stars. They still can't count the stars. Yeah, and he counts the number of the stars. He calls them all by name. He knows the names of the stars. Yes.
Well, and he just, it didn't just throw them all up there because, you know, for eons, and we still do it, we use the stars as navigation aids.
Absolutely. We used it, and it used it as he gave it to us. We use it as a tool. It's a very great tool. But he can identify every one of them. He can speak that one right there is such and such, and this one right here is such and such, and in this galaxy and that galaxy and the other galaxy. When I get to heaven, let's ask God to take us on a tour.
Yeah.
Show me the outer limits, Lord, of the universe. Show me a star that man has not seen. To reveal these things to us. That's the greatness of God. Now, the next time you feel like you're nothing and a nobody, think about this. God, see, I can almost hear the words of Christ. How much more are you to God? You are the pinnacle of creation. And on top of that, when you become the new creation, you become the children of God that He's going to bring into a life eternal with Him.
I was going to say, before the ancient Phoenicians, Phoenicia is today modern day Lebanon, the country of Lebanon. Well, they discovered that you could sail the seas at night if you could see the North Star. Mm-hmm. Because with what astronomical knowledge they had, they knew by looking at the sphere, mm-hmm. You know, the round sphere of the sky, that the North Star, which is in the Little Dipper, in the tail of the Little Dipper, was the furthest most star in the north that would, you know,
that you could see, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was as close to a north direction that you could get.
Right.
So they started using that. They found out that it was quite accurate as far as going from one point to another, using that as the north, knowing where north was on the high seas. There's no direction when you get out on the sea. Everything is, it could be anywhere. Anything could be anywhere.
Yes.
But the North Star gave them a true point of identity as to which way they could go to get from one point to the other. Now, as long as you can see it.
Right.
But the instruments for detecting direction on the high sea was sped up by a couple hundred years, just because they found that the North Star could point you to a direction, at least one direction on the high seas. They could find the other ones by branching off from the North Star.
Excellent. Yes, God designed in so much into it. When we consider the enormity of God's creation, the enormity of what God's done, what God has spoken into place, you know, in our life, it should really shake us. It should really cause us to be in awe. If we can think of this and not be in awe, then we're not paying attention. If we can think of this and not be worshipful, then we're not really getting it. Because all these things are just God's way. Now, day five is the sea life. And flying creatures. Now, why do you say flying creatures instead of birds, Pastor? because if you look at the original Hebrew that is used there, it is better translated flying creatures. So it could include bats. It could include all manner of flying beings. It could include insects. I know y'all been waiting to find out what happened where insects come from. So birds there. So let's notice that real quickly. Verse number 20. Then God said, "Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens." So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So we see God forming and God filling. He forms the firmament, and he fills the firmament with flying creatures. He forms the seas, and he fills the seas with sea creatures. He forms the land, and we're going to see the very next day he fills the land with creatures. But there's a point that I think is significant here that I discovered in my studies is that when God created life, he created it fully mature. What does that mean? That means men didn't come to this world as babies. They come to this world in full maturity. When plants was created, even the fruit-bearing trees had fruit on it. Why did they have fruit on it? Because in a day's time, they're lunch. Basically, a couple of days' time. I'm sorry. The land life will be being sustained by those things. So why do you say that, Derrick? Why do you say they're fully mature? Because there was a difference between created beings and reproduced ones. That God planted in each of those beings the ability to reproduce. The ability to have others. They were functional. The birds were flying. The fish were swimming. Man wasn't born as a baby. Man was given dominion immediately when he. So we need to realize that the first creation of it was created. They were fully mature. Now, by fully mature, I didn't mean they had gray hair like myself. That's the effect of sin in our world. Because when we begin to come a certain age, we get older, and there's a bell that says once we get to a certain point, we stop growing and we start dying. So that's one reason why I believe that in heaven we're at the highest peak. I believe we are what we were intended to be, fully mature. And that's the age that we go back to if we're older in our life. So one thing is this opinion that they're a product of creation and not of reproduction in our life. So they answer an age-old question for you. I know you've been waiting to hear this question all your life. Wonder what came first, the chicken or the egg? That's right. Creation says the chicken. The chicken came, and because of that chicken, he had the ability to produce from that on. And guess what? You bear the very same DNA patterns and strands that Adam and Eve that was planted in them. We're reproductions of them by God's perfect and glorious design. And then finally, land animals and what? And man. Land animals and man. Here in our text. Now, and I'm not going to read it. We don't really have time to read it. But and I to point out, we're not going to do a whole lot of looking into man this week. We're going to look at that next week because I believe there's a lot of details there that we'd love to be able discover. But there's something I think that is really worth taking note of here, and that is the creation of souls. Now, when the Bible speaks here of living creatures, it uses a specific Hebrew word. That Hebrew word is nephesh. 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 Nephesh is the word that is translated there, living beings. But it is a Hebrew word that is used throughout the Old Testament when we refer to the soul. So it is referring to, and it's very basic, it is referring to an air-breathing creature. Those that breathe air. But it also suggests a creation with a soul. So when I looked at that, and I'm like, well, what does that tell us? You know, Ken Ham says that this is proof that animals have souls, but they don't have souls like we have souls. That they're more elevated than the other life. But and some of us that have pets would say, yes, they are. but they have souls. But we have what kind of soul? An eternal soul. Why do we have an eternal soul?
That's how we were created.
That's how we were created. We were created in the very image of God. Now, where did the animals get their breath from?
God
God. How did he give them their breath?
breathed into their nostrils.
Nope.
No.
That was man. He spoke it. And they took a breath. God was said to breathe on man. And man became, I like what the King James uses this phrase, man became a living soul. So it made a distinction there. It made a distinction there between the soul of animals and the soul of man. We have an eternal soul. We got a soul that will not die. We have a soul that's going to either wake up in eternal darkness or eternal light. We have a soul that is made in the image and the reflection of God, and we're going to look at that. We're going to look at that next week. So if I want to look for next week, here's the verses that you should look at. Genesis 1:26, which was the very last verse that we covered, and go into chapter 2, verse 7. That's going to be the passage. God bless you. We appreciate you. Stay warm out there. You're going to need that.
So are you saying that the movie All Gods Go to Heaven, Dogs Go to Heaven is not true?
I'm not saying
Oh,
that.
my
I'm
word.
not saying that at all. I don't have the control over what he puts up there. But yeah, it's when I read that, I was like, really? Really? I said, that's interesting that